Next, I would like to invite Mr. Peter Singh, International Recruitment Specialist at Dizon and Associate Australia. You can start.
Thank you for that. Yep. So I have been with Dizon International for 2 years, and I've been looking after parts of the business development and the recruitment side of the business. So thank you for having me, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the opportunities there are for teachers in Australia, as far as employment and the expectations for salaries and conditions go. So, for teachers in Australia, it's pretty straightforward to finding vacancies. So you can use various job boards, specifically Seek, Indeed, and LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a really good one because there's a lot of schools do advertising independently, as well as obviously a lot of them use government bodies as well. So the independent companies, independent schools, tend to put up ads on their LinkedIn in forums where teachers are a part of, on their discussion threads. So definitely, if you are able to get access to that, start joining these boards now, so that if you do have the intention of moving to Australia and looking for work, that you guys will be most likely one step ahead. So there's a lot of work in regional and remote areas, which is something that I'm going to touch on a little bit later, which is ICT. So the information, communication, and technology aspect to teaching is pretty important, because this is something that's becoming more and more, rather being a standalone subject, it's now embedded in the key learning aspects, criterias. So not only that, it makes yourself a lot more employable, because in these areas such as rural and regional schools, they're really starved for tech-savvy teachers. So that will definitely help you guys with your employment, as there is a shortage of teachers, specifically with experience using these ICT tools. Now, for salaries, it's just pretty much dependent on the state that you're choosing to work in. So Victoria, New South Wales, Queensland, Western Australia, they all have their own salary ranges, but if I was to give you an average, you're looking at around the starting, which is the base, 76,150 to 110,000, and that's also dependent on whether you're a primary school teacher or a secondary school teacher. Also, so one thing I did miss there was the type of school. So it also depends on whether it's a private, Catholic, public, religious school. So they've all got their own means to determine what the wage is. Additional benefits to your base wage is also you get 11% superannuation, which is a retirement fund. That's automatic, so they put that into your fund, which, if you're an Australian citizen or permanent resident, you have access to that only after you're 55 years old. But however, if you guys were to leave permanently Australia, then you would have early access to your superannuation fund, and you can access and take that with you. You also get annual leave up from 4 to 6 weeks, so that's something that Australia really strives to focus on, which is work-life balance. They really, a big part of today's culture is mental health, and that's a element that they're really focusing on, that they do want their people, their teachers, their employees to take that mandatory time off and take a break. You also get paid sick leave. I believe it's 2 weeks. Actually, I'm pretty sure it's 2 weeks. And there is a lot of in certain areas you will also get assistance for relocation and sponsorship support. But it just depends on whether it's, I believe, regional, rural, or I, the chances of that happening in metro schools is probably a little bit less than opposed to the other areas, which are, like I said, they're very short on teachers, so they are willing to accommodate. I'll quickly get back to ICT. So this is something that's pretty important because it's it's something that they're starting to develop to track student progress, reporting, and analytics. And at this point, that's something that they want their teachers to start using, stuff like smart boards, and incorporating PowerPoint presentations and other tools to fast track learning. So we'll move on to workplace environment and legislation. So employment in Australia is governed by, or is ruled by rather, a instrument called the Fair Work Act, which is regulated by the Fair Work itself. So you guys are employed both under that, and there's another instrument which is the Award for Teachers, Education Award. Now that will ensure that teachers are looked after, whether it's job security, whether it's that they're getting paid the correct amount, because there is a minimum wage. Like I said, it's 76,150. So that is an instrument that enforces that, and employers have to adhere to that regulation. It's also there to protect you from unfair dismissal, whether it might be bullying, it might be it could be anything. Basically, it's an instrument that will allow you the security that's afforded to citizens of Australia. So regardless of whether you are on any type of visa, you will have that security. Australia is a very strict workplace with strict regulations. It's designed to protect employees. Okay. So I'm just going to click on to the next slide. So Dizon International, we're currently partnered with a education recruitment agency, and these guys have pretty much positions ranging from primary school to secondary school to, correct me if I'm wrong, Paul, but I believe they also work with special needs schools as well, yeah, and various religious schools. So these guys are looking for teachers currently in all states across Victoria, across Australia, both metropolitan cities and the rural and regional towns alike. And as it's listed here, job listings and vacancies are published by state education departments and some regions after relocation that offer relocation support or extra benefits for teachers, as I mentioned before. But that's obviously dependent on the region and the school specific. So with IT, the good thing about the information technology sector in Australia is that majority of these major employers are already, they've already identified a significant gap between available talent and work that's that they've got, with requirements. Therefore, it's pretty much straightforward as far as attaining work goes. The best way, you should be able to get access to vacancies and available positions via Seek and LinkedIn. In my opinion, I would say LinkedIn is probably the best way to go about locating work, because a lot of the head hiring managers and a lot of the IT specialists pretty much recruit. They recruit one-on-one. So they do a lot of headhunting in that space. So you've got a much more better chance of not entering a pool and rather having a very short odds in getting employment. Um, so some of the major approved sponsors will operate in that space within IT of cybersecurity, cloud, data analytics, and development. So the position salaries for these type of roles vary depending on what role you are. So if you're in an engineering or a infrastructure type role, you're looking at around anywhere between 90 to 140,000, depending on your experience. And then there's obviously the devs, the developing engineers. You've got the cybersecurity analysts and IT project managers, which go towards 150 to 170,000. The three main cities for IT, and I say three main cities because they are the cities that have the highest wages, is Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane. Brisbane, there's a lot of infrastructure, oil, gas, and mining industries that are always constantly on the lookout for good IT support and development. And Melbourne and Sydney being the obvious because they're pretty much the hubs for a lot of the international companies that operate around the world. So they're constantly looking. They're constantly looking for. They're the highest paying, cities for the IT industry. Again, the Fair Work rules apply to the IT industry as well. You guys are covered, although not the same award. You guys are covered under the Tech Award, and that pretty much, again, is an instrument that explains to you what your rights are, what you're entitled to, and it also provides you with the increment increases in salary per year for the next, I believe, 5 years, and the award is readjusted every few years. Fair Work Act is also there to provide you with job security and to enable you to have a fair chance at promotion. There is no discrimination, and that's there to put a stop to any of that. Australia, I'm not too sure whether you guys are aware, but it's pretty well known. Australia is a pretty multicultural place. There is a heavy presence of Indians within Australia. I think I say we because I'm Indian, we have the third highest population outside of English in Australia. So I believe the numbers somewhere between 950,000 to 1 million. So there is a lot of opportunity to also find work through word of mouth because there is a lot of people, Indians in the IT sector within Australia, and they understand the need to obviously grow the companies, progress the company further, and that's only going to happen if they're able to fill their position. So definitely speak to if you've got family or friends in India, definitely reach out to somebody and see if there's any chance that they can get you in touch with an individual that's in that sector. My closing message for the tech industry is that Australia is a growing hub for tech talent. It's, I believe, one of the top 4 most profitable sectors, and it's definitely got a very high ceiling as far as growth is concerned. There's a strong demand specifically for skilled IT professionals in cloud computing, in AI, which is the new big phenom, cybersecurity, data analytics, and software engineering. With competitive salaries, high living standards, and a structured migration system, it would probably be now that it's an opportune time to think about moving into the IT sector within Australia, because, as I said, it's probably one of the most. It's a nation with probably the highest ceiling for that particular sector's growth. Look, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to myself. I'll pass you back over to my colleague Paul. There you go.
So, just reiterating what Pete has said, we do have ongoing positions for teachers. It is a requirement or prerequisite for you to have a completed completed ATSL skills assessment or be registered with one of the state teaching bodies. You'll get I'll send through a list of the state teaching bodies so that you can also look at which state you'd like to practice teaching in. With the IT professionals, we currently don't have any specific roles that we're working with employers with at the moment. However, I have had opportunities where I've worked with project-based positions. So a few years back, I worked with a company that was partnered with on a project with IBM, and we brought over about 15 people from India to do 6-month contracts for the rollout of the national broadband system in Australia. So there are visas for both sponsored employment as well as short-term contract-based projects. One thing I want to talk to you guys about is the employer-sponsored visas. So we not only provide some opportunities with our with clients who are seeking international workers. I think it's important for you to understand where we or how we work as a international recruitment company. So we don't find jobs for individuals. We have employers who we work for who are specifically requesting talent and workers from abroad. Okay, and so we only work with the job vacancies that are available on the clients and employers that have signed us to go out into the world and find some skilled workers. So I know that there are companies around that say, yes, give me your resume, I'll find you a job. We don't offer that type of service because we don't ask you to pay us to find you a job. Our employers pay us to find them international workers. But that's not to say that if you come across an employer who wants to sponsor you, that you cannot approach us to help you out with that process. So I do tell clients who are immigration clients of mine, sometimes they get job offers in Australia, or they have employers who say that they want to offer you a job, but sometimes those employers don't know how to sponsor people, or they are confused, or they don't know what the process is. So what we do is we tell our clients to tell that employer to contact us, or we contact that employer on your behalf, and then we sit down and talk to them about the whole sponsorship process. And generally, because we're based in Australia, we meet them either personally, or if they're not in Melbourne, we meet them over a virtual meeting, and they feel a lot more comfortable because they understand the transparency and the requirements, and they also know that we are connected to you in India or whichever country you're in, and therefore they feel a lot more confident about sponsoring because there is a professional that is the intermediary that facilitates that sponsorship. But that leads on to the temporary sponsored work visa. Has anyone heard of the 482 visa? Yeah, a couple. Yeah, all right, that's okay. The 482 visa is a work visa. Okay, it's different from the permanent residency visa. The permanent residency visa is your own independent permanent visa. The employer-sponsored visa is an employer-driven or employer-sponsored temporary work visa. And you require an Australian employer, who's willing to sponsor you in order to get this work visa. Okay. So as you can see, you must have an employer. If you have an employer, the employer can offer you an employment contract for up to 4 years. So it can be 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. It depends on how long the employment contract is. But even if you get to the end of the 4 years or the end of the 3 years, they can renew that visa if they want to extend your work visa. The other advantage of the 482 visa is that after 2 years, if they want to sponsor you, if they want to continue your employment, you can request, or they may offer you a sponsorship for permanent residency. Okay, so this pathway is permanent residency through employer sponsorship. This is a different pathway to the skilled migrant visa. So after 2 years on the 482 visa, they say, yep, we're happy to continue you. We like your performance. You're doing very well. You can say, would you consider sponsoring me on a permanent visa? They will say yes, most likely, and then it's a permanent visa that you apply for after the 2 years. Again, like I said, if you've got an employer who's willing to offer you a job, doesn't know how to do it or needs more information, please introduce us to them and we'll be happy to speak with them as well. Just in terms of requirements for a 482 visa, you don't need, for IT professionals, you don't need a skills assessment for this. And for teachers, you only need the registration, state registration. So the requirements are a little bit not as onerous as the independent visa. But of course, you're relying on an employer who's going to sponsor you for this visa. But the minimum requirements is you have the relevant qualifications and at least 12 months work experience. So yeah, if the professions you're in require a bachelor degree, so you would have a generally require bachelor degree, so you would have the qualifications, and you only need 12 months work experience. There's an English language test for a 482 visa. It's IELTS 5.0. Okay. Or you can actually get an exemption. So you don't have to do an English test if you have studied high school and university where the medium of instruction was in English. Okay, so there is no requirement to do an English test. So if you've done high school, 5 years of high school, and then 3 years of university, then and the instruction was in English or mostly English, then there's no need, you are exempt, or there's no need to do an English test if you are sponsored on a work visa. But just to clarify with teachers again, you do need to be registered. There is an English test for registration, so unfortunately you can't be exempt from that. There is health examination and police certificate that you require. Again, health and police or criminal history is assessed for most visas, and then you can include your partner and your children and your spouse in a work visa. So you can all go together, and you are the main applicant for the work visa. Okay, and then your wife or your husband or your spouse, they will have work rights and they can work as well. They don't need to have an employer sponsor them. They are attached to your visa, but then they can go there and they can work any job they want to work. But you must work for the employer who sponsored you. Okay, we're going to fees and charges. This is just an overview of the fees and charges and what the expectations are when it comes to costs. When you talk about the costs for your visa, this is mainly for the skilled migrant visa. as well as the work visa, but you're responsible to pay for the following costs, which is professional services or professional fees, and that's in conjunction with, because we work with Mount Bell, those fees are incorporated, our fees are incorporated as part of the professional services. You're liable for visa application fees to the government. If you're applying for your ACS or ITSOL or registration, you are liable to pay those costs. Your English fee, English tests, your health examinations, and your police certificates. So those are the fees that you would be paying for. When it comes to, this is a bit of a fee schedule. This is a fee schedule. These are the government fees for application fees for visas and assessments. So for migration skills assessment, the AITSOL application fee is about $1,200. This is all in Australian dollars. Computer Society is about $1,450. And then there are the fees for the permanent visa is around $4,700, and then additional fees for the child and the spouse. Underneath in the orange section is the work visa. Government fees, those are the fees for the work visa. It's about $3,000 for employer-sponsored temporary work visa. Now, I think it's also important to understand what the employer's costs are. So, when you have an employer, if you have an employer who's offered you a position or is willing to sponsor you, they are also legally obligated to pay for recruitment and sponsorship application costs. When it comes to employer sponsorship, there's two applications. One application is for the company. They need to apply to the government and pay fees so that the government will approve the contract that they're offering to you. So that's the employer sponsorship application part. Now, the other application part is your 482 visa. The 482 visa is your work visa, and that's based on your credentials and your eligibility requirements. And so that 482 visa or any other visa is your own, okay? Some employers who are generous or have added benefits, they may who want to offer incentives, may be willing to pay for your visa. Some may not. Okay, but one thing that you should not be paying is paying the fees for the employer's sponsorship or paying fees for recruitment fees for the employer. So those costs are actually for employer obligated costs. They're not your fees, if that makes sense. Yeah, so if you want to discuss individual cases and a costs calculation for your individual case and professional fees, do make an appointment with Mount Bell, and then they will arrange a consultation in conjunction with my team to discuss your particular matter, and then we'll be able to outline I'll give you an accurate estimation of the cost involved for your case. And that's the end of our presentation. There's a QR code there, and we can also send you a link. That is the assessment form for the points test for the skilled migrant visa. And of course, please be in touch with Mount Bell, and we can talk further about your particular situation. Yes, I think that's it.